What's up, guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jane and you're welcome to today's video. So on today's video we'll be learning how to draft a basic pencil skirt. Okay, so this pattern is going to fit you in the right places. It will accentuate your curves and it will sit nicely on your waist. First off, I would like to say this: please, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please do the needful and hit the subscribe button. If you have anything you want to talk about, please drop your thoughts in the comment section, and also put on your notification bell so that you get notified anytime I upload a new video. Okay, so back to the tutorial. The first thing you'll be needing is your pattern master, your pattern papers, your tape rule, your marker, your pair of scissors, an eraser, and a pencil. And the measurement you'll be needing to make your pencil skirt is your waist circumference, the hip circumference, and the length of the skirt, and also the bust span. So for this tutorial I'll be making a skirt that has a back vent. Okay, so stay tuned. So I've gone ahead to divide my pattern paper into two, the reason being that I'm going to be drafting the front and the back separately. I would have just left it as one piece, but my brain sort of just works better this way. So I've gone ahead to divide my pattern paper into two, one for the front and the other for the back. So we are going to start off with the front. First off, I'll be ruling a 1-inch guide for where our waist will be sitting on. So I'm just going to be drawing a straight line, which is also going to serve as the waist line later on. So I've just gone ahead to draw that 1-inch straight line. Also, mind you that for this skirt pattern I will be taking away 1.5 inch for band. All right, so this skirt is going to be needing a band, so I'll be taking 1.5 inch for the band. Okay, so first off, what I've gone ahead to do, I've drawn the straight line, which is also going to be my starting point. So from that line I'll be marking my waist to hip measurement. Okay, so remember that I took 1.5 inch for waistband, so I'm going to be marking 8 inches on that line minus 1.5, which is 6.5. Okay, so I've just gone ahead to mark that point across the paper just so that the measurements are accurate. All right, so now that I've done that, I will come down to I will just go ahead and take my pattern master and draw a straight line connecting the point that I have just marked on the paper. So I've gone ahead to do that. I hope you can see. The reason I'm just going to be using pencil just so that if I make any mistakes I just easily erase it, but I will still go over to use my marker pen to highlight the points that I've made. So after I have drawn that hip line, the next thing is to determine the length of my skirt. So for this skirt I'll be making use of 26 inches. That is including the 1.5 inch for band. So I've gone ahead to mark 26 inch all across the paper, and then I'll also connect the points as well. Okay, so I'm just here gradually connecting those points that I've marked on the hemline, so that length of the skirt could also serve as my hemline as well. So after I have drawn that line across, I will go over to my waistline and measure my waist circumference. So my waist is 30 inches. 30 divided by 4. First off, I'm just going to show you what we'll be needing for this pattern. All right, first off, my waist measurement, quarter of my waist measurement is 7.5. that is my waist 30 inches divide by 4, that is 7.5. Okay, so 7.5 plus 1 inch for that. I'll be adding a 1 inch dart to the skirt. So by the time I add 1 inch for that, the total of what I'll be taking for my skirt will be 8.5. And then the next thing is the hip measurement, quarter of my hip. My hip is 39. Quarter of my hip measurement is 9.75. And then I'm also going to be marking that down. And also we will have the bust band. For my bust is 8 inches. That is from the distance from one nipple to the other, divided by 2, that is 4. So these are basically all we need for the skirt. Okay, so I will go over to my waistline and mark those measurements that I have just written down. So on my waist, I'll be marking 8.5 inches on the waistline. That is inclusive of my dart. And then I come down to my hip line, mark quarter of my hip measurements, which is 9.75. I'll also mark that down as well. So basically, whatever I have on my hip line, I'll transfer it to the hemline. So because I have 9.75 on my hip, I'm also going to transfer it to the hemline, 9.75. Now, because we are also making a pencil skirt, I'll be deducting 1.5 inch from that 9.75, and then I will mark whatever value I have there. I will mark it down. So I only deducted 1.5 inch from the hemline to create that pencil effect. So I've just gone ahead to highlight the 3 points that I've made, and we'll be connecting these points with my pattern master. So first off, I'm just going to go over to my hip line and mark 1 inch below the hip line and also 1 inch above the hip line. Why? Because I wouldn't want, when I join the 3 points together, that point is looking as if it's sharp. So for me to eliminate any sharp edges, I'm just going to blend that curve to the 1 inch below and above the hip line that I've just made. So I've just drawn a straight line from the hemline to the 1 inch that I marked below my hip line. I'm just gonna have to connect those points with a straight line, and then I'll go over to my waist and also connect the point on my waist to the 1 inch that I marked above my hip line. So now that I've marked this point, I'm going to be having like space in between. So what I'll be doing is I'll take the curvy part of my pattern master and create a curve on those points that I marked earlier. So I'm just gonna head to use my pattern master to just create a curve that is not sharp. So if you're marking yours and it is sharp, make sure that you blend it out, okay, so that when you are done sewing your skirt, you won't have like a bag at the side of the skirt. So next up, I'll go over to my waistline and mark my darts. My bust, half of my bust band is 4 inches. I'll go ahead and mark 4 inch on my waistline. I'll also mark 4 inch on my hip line. So for the length of the darts, I'll be making use of 4 inches for the front bodies, for the front block, sorry. And then on the dart, I'm going to open up the dart legs by 1/2 inch on both sides. So I take 1/2 inch from both sides of the 4 inches bust span that I marked earlier. So I'm just going ahead to connect those dart legs like so. Okay, so now that I have marked, I'm done marking my dart. The next thing we are going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight all of those points that I have made with my marker. so that it's very visible and you understand. I hope you understand all the markings that we just made. All right, now that we're done, I'm go to my waistline at the side. I'm going to be extending it by half an inch so that the skirt will sit nicely on the waist. And after I have done that extension by half an inch, I'm going to connect this back to my waistline. I'm just going to create a slight curve and connect that extension back to my waistline. And then after I have done this, the next thing I'll be doing is to add my seam allowance all around the pattern. I'll be adding 1 inch seam allowance at the side, that is the side seam. I'm going to be adding 1 inch seam allowance, and also at the hemline I'll be adding 1 inch seam allowance as well. So I've just gone ahead to label what this part is. This is the center front and it should be cut on fold. So when you are cutting on your fabric, make sure that you place this pattern on fold, and make sure you place this pattern on your folded fabric. So I've just gone ahead to label what each part is. So now I'm just going to add 1 inch seam allowance at the hemline and also at the side seam. Okay, now that I'm done with that, we are going to go over to the back. So for the back, also note that when you are marking on your fabric, make sure that you add, like say for instance your hip is 39, you are divided by 4, which is 9.75. you can go ahead and add 4 inches to your back measurement, just because we are going to be needing 1 inch for the dart. Okay, sorry, 1 inch for the zipper and the other to spread across the pattern. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm just going up ahead to mark my guideline as usual, like I did for the front. I've gone ahead to mark 1 inch guideline, and that is also going to form the waistline as well. So after I have marked this, I'm going to go over to the end of my pattern paper and mark 1 inch straight line from the beginning of the starting point down to the hemline. So I'll just go and mark 1 inch. Okay, so I'm just marking 1 inch. Now I'm going to tell you what that 1 inch is for. Now remember I said that this skirt is going to be having a vent at the back. Okay, so this is also going to be like an extension of the vent. So I'm just going around to make sure that I have 1 inch exactly on the pattern, and then I am going to connect those points with my pattern master and just make sure that I draw a straight line that is equal, that is connecting to all the points that I have marked on the paper. Okay, so now that I am done marking the 1 inch at the end of the other side of the paper, the next thing I'll be doing is to go over to my waistline. That is 1 inch we drew at the beginning of the paper, that is going to serve as my waistline. On that line, I'm going to take half an inch from that 1 inch mark that we made. On that line, I'll be taking half an inch, but before I do that, I'm just going to mark my measurement. That is, I'm going to just impute my waist and my hip and then the length of my skirt. So I've just gone ahead to mark the distance between my waist to the hip and also to my the length of the skirt. So I'm just basically going ahead to mark those points at the other side of the paper, just so that they correspond with each other when I draw the line. Okay, so I'm just gradually, ever so slowly marking those points just to make sure that I have all my horizontal lines corresponding with each other. So I'm just going ahead to mark my hip line, and also I'll go down to the hemline and mark my hemline as well. Do not forget that the hemline is also the same thing with the length of the skirt. So now that I'm done marking those points, the next thing I'll be doing is to go over to my waistline and take half an inch on that line. Okay, I hope you can see the 1 inch mark that I made. All right, so I'm just going over to the waistline to take half an inch, and then I will connect that half an inch to my hip line. So on my hemline, I'll go up by 7 inch. That is the length of the vent that I want to take for this pattern. So I go up by 7 inch, and then I'll mark 7 inch on that line, and then on that same point that I marked 7 inch, I'm going to come in by 1 inch. Now after coming in by 1 inch, I'm just highlighting it so that you can see the points. I went in by 1 inch from that 7 inch vent line that I marked. Now that I've done that, on that 1 inch, I'm going to connect it to my hip line and straight up to my waist. So I'm just basically doing what I did for the front. I came down by 1 inch below the hip line and up by 1 inch and above the hip line as well, just so that all of the curves on the skirt correspond and they are all perpendicular to each other. So after I have done this, I'm just going to use my pattern master to connect that 1 inch extension, that 1 inch that we took out from the vent line. So I've connected it to my hip line and also straight up to the waistline. So you can see this is the back. The back is not supposed to be straight. Now if you measured your own pattern this way and you sew it, you discover that the back of your skirt is going to take the shape of your body and hug you out nicely. It will sit very nice at the back and your bum will come out well. Okay, so this method is just basically if you want your bum to just protrude a little, you want that bum illusion effect, then you can go with this method. But the regular way to cut your pencil skirt is still okay, but this is just to add extra elegance to your skirt. So now that I'm done that, I've just gone ahead to mark 1 inch After connecting the 1 inch that I took in from my vent line and connected it to my waist and then to my hip, I've also gone ahead to also mark another 1 inch from that line, and that new 1 inch that I have marked is going to be for the zipper allowance. Okay, so that is where your zipper is going to be sitting. The new 1 inch that I marked inward is where the zipper is going to be sitting. So I'm just connecting the points with my pattern master just to make sure that the points all correspond with each other. Alright, so now that I'm done marking, I'm just going to go ahead and blend out the curve. Make sure that there are no pointed edges like I said previously. Make sure that we don't have pointed edges so that your skirt doesn't have a bag at the side of the seam. So I've also gone ahead to use my marker to highlight the points that I've made so that you can see it clearly. I've just created my zipper allowance, and you can see that I also indicated what that markings that I made, that is where the zipper will be sitting. So the next thing to do is to just transfer all your measurements to your body, to your block. So for my waist 8.5, my hip 9.75. Now for the hemline, what we are going to do is to mark. We're going to be measuring including the zipper allowance for the hemline. So you mark your quarter of your hip measurement plus the 1 inch zipper allowance on the hip line, and then you transfer it to the hemline. Okay, that's what we'll do for the hem. Transfer what you have on your hip plus the zip allowance to the hemline. Okay, and then you mark it down there. Now that we have done that, remember that we took out 1.5 inch at the hemline to give it a pencil effect. We are also going to take out 1.5 inch at the other side of the paper, and then after taking that 1.5 inch, we'll be connecting that point to the hip line and up to the waistline. Okay, so now that we are done connecting it, we'll go over to the waistline and mark the dart. So 4 inches for the dart from the zipper line. You mark 4 inches for the dart, and then you open up the dart legs by 1/2 inch on both sides. For the back dart, we'll be taking 5 inch for the length of the back dart. So I've just gone ahead to mark 5 inch for the back dart, and then I'll just create the dart for the back. Okay, so now that I'm done with all of that, I've created the dart for the back. I will just go ahead and give it some highlights. Okay, I'll give it some highlights so that it will be visible for we all to see. Okay, so now that we are done with all of that, I've gone ahead to label the parts, the waist and the hip. I've also gone up at the side of my side seam. I've raised it up by 1/2 inch and connected it to the point like we did for the front. So the next thing I'll be doing is to just add my seam allowances all around the pattern. 1 inch seam allowance at the side seam and 1 inch seam allowance at the hemline. Alright, now that we are done, the next thing is to cut out the pattern. So first off, you will need to fold in your dart when you are about to cut your pattern. Okay, so make sure that you fold in your dart, fold in the 1 inch dart that you took at the waist, and then you can now cut out your pattern. Do not forget, this is an open dart, right? So except even if you're not going to be using a curved waistband, but it's still very important that when you are cutting your pattern, make sure that you fold in your dart. So I've gone ahead to do that, and the next thing, I'll also fold in the dart for the front pattern as well. Okay, so after I have done all of this, I'm just going to cut out the pattern. So that after I've done cutting, I'm just going to label what each part is. The front is going to be cut on fold, and the back is going to be cut to, you're going to be needing 2 pieces for the back. Okay, so and that's my vent as well. You can see how it's sitting nicely at the back of the block. Next up is to go over to the waistline of the front and the back pattern to just trace it out. So I've gone ahead to trace out the front, and then I measured 1.5 inch down, and then I will just follow the shape that I traced out, and then I will create my waistband. And then after creating the waistband, I'll be adding 1/2 inch seam allowances for the band, so that I'll be able to have enough space, room to join it to the pattern. Okay, so now that I've done this, I've also gone ahead to do the same thing for the back as well. So after I have done this, the next thing I did was I cut out the band. So after I have done this, if I'm cutting it out, I'll be needing like 4 pieces for the back and 2 pieces for the front. But because I don't want to have a lot of fabric or pieces around, I'm just going to, after joining cutting out the pattern and adding all the seam allowances, I'll be joining the front and the back together, so that when I cut my band, I'm going to be having just one straight long piece. I'm going to be cutting it into 2 so that I can use one to turn the other when I'm about to join it to the skirt. I hope you understand. So after this, I'm going to show you this is what it looks like. Now if you go ahead and cut it this way, you're going to have 4 pieces for the front, for the back, and 2 for the front. But because I don't want that, like I said, I'll be joining them. So I've gone ahead to join the back and the front together, and this is what it looks like. So when I'm cutting, I'll be cutting 2 pieces for my band. Now after this, the next thing I've gone to do is also to extend the back by 1 inch, so that I will have an overlap for where the button of the skirt will be sitting. Alright guys, this is what a basic skirt should look like. Thank you for watching. If you like my video, please comment and like, subscribe, and put on the notification bell so that you get notified anytime I upload a new video. Okay guys, so until I come your way next time, thank you for watching. I will see you in my next video. Stay lovely. Bye.